Welcome back to At the Buzzer. I'm Tyler Fertel alongside my co-hosts Andrew Lobliner, Campbell Klein, and Dean McCullum. And today we have a very, very exciting and fun podcast for all of you. We will be doing our official full first round 2021 NFL mock draft. So before we start, I just want to tell you that this mock draft involves no trades. It is a no trade mock draft. So therefore, each team will be in the place that they are currently in the draft order. So, yeah, let's get straight into it. And the first overall pick is obviously the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, Campbell, let's get started.
All right, so with the first overall pick, probably the easiest pick in the draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars, going to be taking Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. Trevor Lawrence is probably the best quarterback prospect we've seen in 10-plus years. 2018 national championship. Obviously, this dude can play. He's a no-brainer. He's going first overall. It's pretty much guaranteed. So, yeah, that's my first overall pick.
And with the second overall pick, the New York Football Jets will be taking Zach Wilson, quarterback out of BYU. Obviously, the Jets have been looking for their franchise quarterback for quite some time. Many people thought it was going to be Sam Darnold. Didn't work out. Got traded to the Panthers this offseason. And to replace him, we predict, and a lot of people around the country predict, that they will take Zach Wilson with the number 2 overall pick. Zach Wilson obviously not being put in the spotlight throughout his college football career. Kind of went under the radar for most of this draft process. But after his pro day, everyone knew how much talent he had. And obviously, he has a good arm. He's pretty good with his legs, too. So he's a little bit short. So, I mean, that is something that maybe he has a disadvantage compared to other quarterbacks in this class, including Trey Lance and Trevor Lawrence. But obviously, a quarterback like Kyler Murray has made it work. A quarterback like Drew Brees has made it work. So why couldn't Zach Wilson do it, too? So, yeah, the Jets will be taking Zach Wilson in our mock draft with the second overall pick.
All right, next up, I guess I'm the GM of the 49ers, and we're going to go with Mac Jones out of Alabama. This pick is probably the first pick where it's like not consensus so far. There's several quarterbacks that I think could go here. And if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know, the San Francisco 49ers traded up to the number 3 overall selection from number 12, which means that they're going to select a QB in this draft class. But no one really knows which one it is. My guess here is that it'll be Mac Jones, just because I think he fits their scheme perfectly. He's a very similar quarterback to Matt Ryan and Jimmy Garoppolo, 2 quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan has had a ton of success with, making it to 2 Super Bowls with those guys in the NFL. So I think Mac Jones fits what the 49ers want to do. And he's not the most athletic guy in this draft, but his accuracy is off the charts and he has a really good arm. So I think this would be a perfect fit for the Niners.
Before we go on to the next pick, I think that a large piece of this pick for the 49ers is whether they're going to go with talent or fit. Because at least in my perspective, I think that a quarterback like Justin Fields might have more talent than Mac Jones, maybe Trey Lance too, but Mac Jones, like Andrew said, is a good fit for the scheme of the 49ers. And as we've seen, Jimmy Garoppolo with a great 49ers defense made a Super Bowl run 2 years ago. So if Mac Jones can develop under Jimmy Garoppolo, because Jimmy Garoppolo will probably play next year, unless maybe they take Justin Fields and play him from the start. But I don't think that's going to happen. So if they do take Mac Jones and sit him under Jimmy Garoppolo, I definitely think he can learn some stuff from that veteran and potentially be a good starting QB in a couple of years.
All right, now we have the Atlanta Falcons selecting at 4. This is definitely one of the first candidates of a trade down in this draft, but since this is a no-trade mock draft, I'm going to have the Atlanta Falcons be selecting, in my opinion, the second best draft prospect in this class, Kyle Pitts, once in a generational talent at the tight end position. I mean, he's been compared to the likes of Darren Waller, and if he can live up to the hype, I mean, he is so athletic, and he made Kyle Trask actually look somewhat decent. With all those horrible balls that Kyle Trask was throwing, he made all of them work. So Kyle Pitts, an amazing prospect. he's going to be one of the highest tight ends picked ever if he goes 4. I think the Atlanta Falcons will trade down, but I mean, if they don't, I think Kyle Pitts is the pick right here. I mean, he's a once in a generational talent.
And I know this has been said a lot over the past couple of weeks in a bunch of mock drafts and a bunch of draft information shows and stuff, but Kyle Pitts can be used not only as a tight end, but as a wide receiver. He can go up and catch the ball against big cornerbacks, fast cornerbacks. So he's that kind of player where he's a very versatile player. You can play all over your offense, and he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife in an NFL offense. And he was just unreal in college. So big things to come for Kyle Pitts.
All right, now with the 5th overall pick, the Cincinnati Bengals will select Penei Sewell out of Oregon, their offensive tackle, who opted out of the 2020 season due to COVID-19. And this pick is pretty simple. The Bengals have a terrible offensive line, and he's the best offensive lineman here. So in an interview, Sewell seemed pretty open and potentially excited to play and protect Joe Burrow, so could be an interesting fit. And obviously the Bengals' main priority is going to be protecting Joe Burrow, who could be a generational talent. So, yeah.
I've been seeing a bunch of rumors lately that the Bengals are definitely looking at Jamar Chase for this pick, wide receiver out of LSU, to pair him up again with Joe Burrow, who played with him back in LSU. But then it switched to this clip of Joe Burrow getting absolutely hit stick. So that was sort of the reasoning behind the guy who made the video for the Bengals to select Sewell here. And I mean, he might be a little bummed out that he doesn't get to protect his boy Justin Herbert, but I think this is the right pick for the Bengals here. At the end of the day, it's not really Joe Burrow's decision. I'm sure he wants Jamar Chase more than Sewell, but at the end of the day, it's a management decision. And I think they're going to make the right choice and go with Penei Sewell out of Oregon.
I'm not so sure if he would rather have Jamar Chase than Penei Sewell in this situation. I mean, Penei Sewell protected Justin Herbert in college, and he wants some protection going to next year. And the Bengals want to protect their franchise quarterback, a man that missed a good chunk of the season last year due to a torn ACL, and MCL and meniscus, I think. So, they need to protect their franchise quarterback. And although they might be tempted by Jamar Chase and some other wide receiver prospects, or maybe even Kyle Pitts if he doesn't go forward to the Falcons or another team, I feel like Penei Sewell is the correct pick there for them.
Well, I mean, there's always that good friend bias that Joe Burrow might have to persuading the Bengals to take Jamar Chase, but I think they will take Sewell. Next pick now.
Okay, so a player that we did detail a little bit there, the Miami Dolphins with the 6th overall pick after trading down from 3. Will take Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU. Obviously, it might be tempting here for the Dolphins to go with 2 other really high prospects in the wide receiver position on the draft board in DeVonta Smith and JAYLEN WADDLE. But Jamar Chase seems to be the number 1 prospect in the wide receiver position in this draft. He has been throughout the year. He opted out of this past year after winning the national championship the year before with Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Patrick Queen, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a stacked LSU team. So although he did opt out, he still remained the number 1 wide receiver prospect, or arguably the number 1 wide receiver prospect. He's a speedy wide receiver, good hands, can play in the slot, can play on the outside. He's a wide receiver that can play all over the place, has unlimited potential. So I feel like this is a pretty safe pick for the Dolphins here. They get themselves a good wide receiver, a good weapon to go along with Tua, give him another weapon, and a wide receiver trio of Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, and Jamar Chase. That, after last year's wide receiver trio, that is not bad at all for the Dolphins.
All right, so next up is the Detroit Lions. And like the Dolphins, they are in need of a wide receiver. They just lost their number 1 wide receiver, Pro Bowl wide receiver, Kenny Golladay, who recently signed with the Giants in free agency. So they have a huge hole there. I know that they signed Tyrell Williams, but he was pretty much injured all of last year. And the year before that, he wasn't any good. So the Lions could really use a wide receiver at this number 7 overall selection. So I'm going to have them going with JAYLEN WADDLE. The only other guy I think that if they were taking a wide receiver that could go ahead of Jaylen Waddle, be DEVONTA Smith. But I have a feeling that Jaylen Waddle will go a little bit ahead just because he's a better athlete and he looks more like a NFL wide receiver, and he's built more like NFL wide receiver compared to DEVONTA Smith. So I think the Lions are going to bank on Jaylen Waddle and pick him number 7 overall.
Speaking of Smith, speed in the wide receiver position, Jaylen Waddle can make big plays whenever you want him to make big plays. Obviously, he had some injury problems in this past year, missed a good chunk of the season, but came back for that national championship game, played a little bit. But Jaylen Waddle, the most explosive player in this draft class. I mean, it's a good pick for the Lions. As long as he can stay healthy, he will be a very good wide receiver.
Yeah, I think the only thing for me for the Lions to pick Jaylen Waddle, he's just got to stay healthy. I'd say maybe they'd side with DEVONTA Smith just because it might be a safe pick. I mean, some people are concerned about his weight and his build, but I'm not really concerned about that much. That's not really going to affect who I think is going to go here, but Jaylen Waddle, definitely a great wide receiver to have because the Lions are in a lot of trouble right now. So now we're going to move on to the 8th overall pick, where I will be presenting the Carolina Panthers, and they're going to be improving their defense by taking, in my opinion, the best defensive player in this draft class in Micah Parsons. There were a few reports early, probably a few months ago, that he did have some character problems, which might tank his draft stock a little, but nevertheless, I still think he's the best defensive player in this draft. He's so versatile. He's great in run coverage and especially pass coverage, and he is very, very fast and athletic. So I think that the Panthers definitely in need of a bunch of things, but I think their defense the most. He can really handle that core right in the middle of their defense. So I think he's going to be a great building block and a starting place for the Panthers to move on in the future with a pretty good defense.
All right, now here with the 9th overall pick for the Denver Broncos, I'll be selecting Justin Fields, quarterback out of Ohio State. And recently, Justin Fields' draft stock has been plummeting. And in my opinion, he doesn't deserve that. I think after the national championship, he could have been considered the second best quarterback in this draft. But now he's not too high up there, and I don't really see a clear reason why. This dude can obviously ball. After the semifinals against, I forget which team it was. If one of you could remind me, that'd be great. But he was just, against Clemson. He was outplaying Trevor Lawrence, the first overall pick in this draft. He would not miss a pass downfield. He was lofting it up 60 yards down there, dime every time. He can run, he can pass, he can really do it all. I think the Broncos gotta pick him. He can be that guy. I really think a few years down the road, he could be one of the premier quarterbacks in the NFL.
I definitely... Tyler?
You.
Okay, I'll go. I definitely think that Justin Fields is someone that the Niners could take at 3 over Mac Jones, but a bunch of reports saying that Mac Jones is going, but I like Justin Fields here. I don't know if John Elway is ready to move on from Drew Lock because apparently he really, really believes in him. So it's just a matter of whether or not he still believes in him and wants to give him one more chance.
Before you go, Andrew, here, I feel like if Justin Fields does drop, if he does fall through 3, if Mac Jones or Trey Lance does end up being taken at 3, I feel like it's unlikely he falls to 9 just because a team like potentially the Patriots or potentially the Washington football team or maybe the Bears could trade up and try to get him or Trey Lance or Mac Jones, whoever falls. I just feel like in a good draft class, a good quarterback draft class, I feel like it's unlikely that 2 or 3 of them drop past the 10th spot and maybe even the 9th spot. I definitely feel like the Broncos are definitely the team that can either trade down if they don't want to take a quarterback or trade up if they do because they are scared that a team will trade up to either the Lions spot or the Panther spot to get a quarterback there. So I definitely feel that in a no trades mock draft that this pick obviously makes sense, but in the NFL draft, it's definitely possible, but I don't know if it's likely just because I feel like there are going to be some trade up and downs for quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree with Tyler. I don't think Justin Fields will last until 9, but because of the no trades, this is where we have him going. the Broncos are an interesting team because they have so many different needs. They're kind of in a rebuilding phase, their franchise, to put it nicely. And Drew Lock hasn't been too impressive. At least last year, he wasn't very impressive. So the Broncos have a ton of needs. They could use a defender. They could use a wide receiver. But they could also use a quarterback, I think, because Drew Lock is not as good as people projected him to be. So I think that if Justin Fields or any other of these quarterbacks fall, and the Broncos would happily take one of them. All right, up next at number 10 overall, my favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys, as it says on the screen, America's team with the 10th overall pick, selecting Patrick Surtain, the second out of Alabama. I would be elated if the Cowboys got Patrick Surtain. I think that he is going to be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro, top 5 cornerback in the NFL sooner rather than later. He's built like a cornerback number 1. He can guard in the slot or he can guard on the outside. And I think it also helps that his dad was also like a Pro Bowl, All-Pro cornerback. So he's got football in his genes. And I think a lot of sons of former NFL players usually are good with the NFL experience. Obviously, the Cowboys, their biggest need is like any defender. So he helps a lot. And I think that this puts the Cowboys in a really good situation for next year to get Patrick Surtain, who could jump in and play cornerback 1, honestly. And I think that he'll be able to flourish in that role.
Okay, I will be taking Campbell's spot for his favorite team, the New York Giants, and they will be taking in this mock draft Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle, although he can play guard from Northwestern. Obviously, the Giants took Andrew Thomas out of Georgia last year in the NFL draft at the 4th overall position. So taking another offensive lineman might not be the greatest thing for the Giants as they do have other needs. But getting a versatile offensive lineman is very important for the Giants if they want to protect. I don't know if he's their franchise quarterback anymore, but their quarterback, Daniel Jones. Obviously, like if they don't trust Daniel Jones, they could always take a quarterback here. If Trey Lance, Justin Fields, or Mac Jones falls, if they really like them, I don't think it's going to happen. But I feel like Rashawn Slater, makes a lot of sense here after releasing Kevin Zeitler. I hope I pronounced that right. Their right guard last year. They get another offensive lineman who can. He's a very NFL ready player. He can jump right in. Although they do have a pretty good left tackle, Nate Soldier. He can really play anywhere. He can play on the right. He can play on the left. So just put him in and have him protect Daniel Jones for the season and maybe another quarterback next season if they decide to not keep Daniel Jones as their starter. So, yeah, Rashawn Slater is going to the New York Giants in this mock draft.
I think this is great value for the Giants at pick 11 here to get an offensive tackle. In my opinion, that's their biggest need. I mean, they got Kenny Golladay in the offseason. Many people thought that before signing Kenny Golladay that they were going to try and target a wide receiver in the draft. However, now they have that covered. They have their wide receiver 1. Daniel Jones has those weapons, and now all he needs is protection. And I think this is the last straw for Daniel Jones this next season. I mean, now he has 2 top 11 first-round picks in the past 2 drafts to protect him, plus Nate Soldier and those 3 wide receiver weapons. And I mean, Kenny Golladay, obviously, Sterling Shepard, and whoever else, and then you get Saquon back. I think that if Daniel Jones Darius Slayton, that's who I was forgetting. I get him confused with Sterling Shepard, but you get Saquon back. If Daniel Jones doesn't really thrive in this offense, I don't see him being the starting quarterback for the Giants after this season. So we'll have to see. I mean, this is a big make or break season for Daniel Jones, and I like the pick for Rashawn Slater here.
And before we go on to the next pick, adding to what Dean was kind of saying, that they got their wide receiver number 1 in Kenny Golladay. In early mock drafts and in early draft predictions, a lot of people had the Giants taking wide receiver, potentially Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, and at the beginning, Kyle Pitts, because people had him falling there, but obviously he's not going to fall there now. So, but they have their guy and in Kenny Golladay at the wide receiver position, so they don't need another one. So they might as well go with someone that can protect their quarterback, and a really good one. So Rashawn Slater.
And I forgot to mention really quickly before we move on to the Eagles, I forgot to mention Evan Ingram, great tight end weapon. Now we are going to move on to the 12th overall pick for the Eagles. We've talked about this guy a lot, DeVonta Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama. We pretty much covered him while talking about all the wide receivers, to be honest, who've already been taken before him. I think he's the second best wide receiver in this class. The reason why a lot of people in their mocks have him dropping is, like I mentioned before, his weight and his build overall. And people think that he's going to get absolutely obliterated in the NFL versus huge guys like people who are like Derwin James, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, I saw some videos of DeVonta Smith, and he was getting bailed by weak college corners and safeties who were hitting him not that hard. But then I saw what if Derwin James was right here? Then he'd be dead or something like that. So I think that DeVonta Smith, the Eagles will go with him since they kind of whiffed on their first round pick last year in Jalen Reagor, wide receiver out of TCU, something like that, I think. So I think they'll go wide receiver again, get potentially Jalen Hurts. They still haven't named him their official starter. So get whoever's playing quarterback for them another weapon.
Whether Jalen Reagor turns out to be good or not, their wide receivers outside of him are so bad anyways that they could really use that. Their offensive line is not that bad, although it was portrayed as really bad last year because of Carson Wentz. But I think the Eagles, they're going through a rebuilding process. They're trying to get a fresh start, and I think that if they can get DeVonta Smith, maybe if he's taken higher, Jalen Waddle, one of these playmakers, I think could really, really help their team moving forward.
Okay, moving on to my Los Angeles Chargers. With the 13th overall pick, we take Jaycee Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina. Obviously, with the two top tackles off the board in Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater, there isn't a left tackle for the Chargers to take here, in my opinion. Obviously, people think that Christian Darrisaw could be a candidate here, but I think Jaycee Horn is a better overall prospect. And I think he could potentially fit straight into Brandon Staley's defense as a cornerback number one. He is speedy. He is big. I think he can potentially guard Tyreek Hill from the start. It might be difficult, but you know what? That's what the Chargers are going to need him to do. And if he can do that, the pick was worth it. And if he can just be a good cornerback, obviously we lost Casey Hayward. We released him in the offseason, so we're missing that cornerback number one. We re-signed Michael Davis as his full name, who was a really good cornerback for us last year. He was probably our best cornerback. But Jaycee Horn, great cornerback, has a lot of potential. I think he can be a Pro Bowler as soon as even maybe his first season if he's that good. But second or third, no doubt about it. So obviously a great cornerback, big, speedy, NFL-ready player. So yeah.
Jaycee Horn is definitely a very intriguing prospect just because he's super athletic, which you need to be really athletic, as you said, to guard guys like Tyreek Hill and other types of receivers. But I feel like the way you're describing it, it's a lot to ask for a rookie to jump in and just guard Tyreek Hill right away. But I do think that one day Jaycee Horn will be able to get there.
I think I missaid that there. That the Chargers at some point down the line, the Chargers play Tyreek Hill twice a year, and he has, at least last season, he destroyed us. So we need, if Jaycee Horn can just really be a good corner, just be out there as a cornerback 1 or 2 and just do his job and potentially limit Tyreek Hill and maybe not let him get more than 1 touchdown, which is definitely a big ask, even though it might not be for some other wide receivers in the NFL. Jaycee Horn, I definitely think that the Chargers defense, after losing Casey Hayward, are limited with their outside corners. Chris Harris Jr., a good veteran, has been playing the slot recently. So he might be asked to jump in there quickly, but I think that he's a lot of potential. He's speedy. He's big. He's NFL ready. Good pick for the Chargers here. And although there might be a bunch of other candidates, I think that he's a good overall prospect. So why not take a shot on him and give him a chance early?
All right. So with the 14th overall pick, we got the Minnesota Vikings. And they the Vikings are an interesting spot because they're not like a tanking team, like some of the teams at the top of the draft. Like they don't have a top 5 pick, but they're not like a really like significant championship contender or even a playoff team right now. Although I think they do have the potential with Justin Jefferson, who's only going to get better, and if Kirk Cousins can play like to the best of his ability. But one thing that was a big reason why they weren't a playoff team last year was their offensive line, and Elijah Vera Tucker seems to be a really good offensive tackle for them. And I think that they don't have many like glaring needs, but somewhere where they could really use an upgrade is the offensive line. And like Kirk Cousins, he's like the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, but he probably isn't even considered like top 10. But I still think that Kirk Cousins has a lot left in the tank, and I still think that he can lead the Vikings to the playoffs. But I think he's going to need more protection, and Elijah Vera Tucker will give him that.
All right, with the 15th overall pick, I'll be drafting Trey Lance for the New England Patriots. Trey Lance, quarterback used to be for North Dakota State. In his 2019 season, which was a full season, he finished with 287 pass attempts for 28 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. I was just looking that up. I found that stat crazy. That's actually the NCAA record for most attempts in a season without an interception. So, obviously, this dude knows how to take care of the ball. He's a dual threat quarterback. He can run, he can pass, as I just said. He's a great build, super athletic, playmaker. He's strong. He can really do it all. The Patriots, they could really use a quarterback. They could use a franchise quarterback, someone who fits well with Bill Belichick, and I think Trey Lance can be that guy, and they should take him 15th overall this year.
And this is one of the picks for sure that, since it's a no-trade mock draft, Trey Lance, I don't want to say definitely, but he most likely will not be here. He definitely won't be here at pick 15. Maybe a trade-up candidate will be the New England Patriots to maybe jump up and select him. But Tyler, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk about Trey Lance as a play here. And like we were talking about a little before the podcast, Trey Lance is being compared to Josh Allen. If he does end up going to the Patriots, he won't have to play immediately, which will be good for his development. They can play Cam Newton for at least half the season, maybe the full season, if they want to give Trey Lance an opportunity to just develop into a more complete player. Obviously, he's good with his legs, and he has an incredible arm. So if he can just establish a little more accuracy, he's going to be a dangerous NFL quarterback. So honestly, there's nothing else to say. Trey Lance, I collect a little bit of sports cards here and there. I've started to recently. Trey Lance is my quarterback to watch. I feel like he's going to be a little under the radar going to next season as an NFL prospect, an NFL quarterback. So Trey Lance, a player who is an all-around, he's really athletic all around. So definitely a player that could be flashy in the NFL, but also get some great results for his team.
Yeah, before we move on, we can move on, but I was just going to say one last thing, that he's definitely not going to be available at 15. So if the Patriots do want to get their hands on Trey Lance, they will have to trade up for him.
All right, that is my bad for sort of spoiling this 16th overall pick by the Arizona Cardinals. But nevertheless, I will be having them take Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. Before his, did he have surgery? Where did he have surgery? In his back? Was it back surgery? Okay, I think it was. And before
he's had a ton of injury problems.
I think he had back injuries recently, and then over the span of either this past season or the year before, he had knee injuries.
Yeah, because I know he just went through a surgery like in the past few months. But I will have them be selecting Caleb Farley before his back surgery. I think he was considered the number 1 corner, maybe number 2 is interchangeable between.
It was interchangeable between
him and Surtain. But since because of this back surgery, he's going to be the 3rd cornerback selected, and he's going to be the Patrick Peterson replacement. Went to the Vikings in free agency. Now the Cardinals just replace him with a very, very talented corner in Caleb Farley. I mean, I like him definitely as more potential as someone like JC Horn. But the thing is, his injuries are definitely going to make him drop in this draft, which is why we have him getting picked at pick 16. Anyone have anything to say about Caleb before we move on?
Yeah. Angie, you want to go before me?
No, you can go. I'll go after you.
Okay, so obviously Caleb Farley, in my perspective, may have the most raw talent for a cornerback in this draft. And I think it's kind of, I mean, obviously injury concerns really do hurt someone's draft, where they're drafted, their draft position. But I think with the raw talent Caleb Farley has, I think it's kind of ridiculous if he dropped past maybe the 20 position, because he was without much draft injury concerns. He was considered arguably the best cornerback in this draft class. And for the Cardinals here, this is a very, very good pick for them, because if he does stay healthy, he might be able to be a cornerback number one just from the start. I mean, if you watch his video and you watch his highlights, the man he's a ball hawk. He knows where the ball's going to be, and he can break the ball up from a wide receiver kind of whenever he's close to it. And I feel like it's pretty similar with JC Horn. But when you just look at Caleb Farley, his talent is just, I mean, obviously Surtain and Horn also have a lot of talent, but Caleb Farley is just, he's so athletic that there's nothing really else to say. I feel like if he drops to this position, which he probably will just because of injury concern, that it's a very, very good value pick for the Cardinals. And it's, in my perspective, worth it for them because he can, like I said before, he can be their cornerback number one from the jump start, and they need one after losing Patrick Peterson. So, yeah. Andrew, I think you had something to say about this.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to you. His draft stock has plummeted recently because of his injury concerns. And also, I think because Patrick Surtain and JC Horn both had ridiculous pro days, and Caleb Farley wasn't able to have his own pro day because of his injury. So the NFL scouts and the NFL coaches didn't get to see him really do anything at all. So he's a little bit of an unknown prospect compared to these guys. So there's definitely a huge reward, but there's definitely some risk with selecting him. So that's why I think he's going to fall farther in the draft.
Okay, so with the 17th overall selection in our NFL mock draft, we have the Las Vegas Raiders taking Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech University, the same university that Caleb Farley went to, back-to-back Hokies going here. So, Christian Darrisaw has been projected to even go higher than this, to the Chargers potentially at 13. That's really been the highest position he's really been in. He's not really gone past that. I mean, here and there, you might see him going to the Giants at 11 if Rashawn Slater and Penei Sewell go higher. But I feel like obviously that the Raiders still they lost Gabe Jackson and Ronnie Hudson. They're probably two best offensive linemen in the past season. They're a guard and a center. They still have Colton Miller, who's a pretty good left tackle. So Christian Darrisaw might be more of a development player for them and potentially play at the right tackle, a position of need for them, and the right guard if he can develop there. And obviously, it's hard for an offensive tackle to go straight to a center, but you never know. The Raiders might want to bring him there, but he might be I feel like Elijah Vera Tucker might make more sense for the Raiders here. Obviously, he's not on the board, but if they get to choose between both, just because Elijah Vera Tucker has experience playing at the guard position and the tackle position, and they're kind of ranked the same in the draft position, obviously, like they probably like one more than the other, so they choose off of that. But if they want a player, offensive lineman who is versatile that can play both guard and tackle, they might want to go with him just because they have their left tackle. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tyler. I don't think he has any experience playing guard or center, so I'm not sure moving him there in his rookie season will be the best decision, but they could use offensive line either way, and I know he's a pretty talented prospect, so I think the Raiders would definitely be happy to get him. All right, next up is my favorite draft prospect, edge rusher out of the University of Michigan, Kwity Paye, going 18th overall to the Miami Dolphins. Kwity Paye is an extremely talented football player. He's an incredible athlete. His pro day numbers were just off the charts. He ran one of the fastest 40 times for any defensive end and edge rushers. And also, I think he had the third most bench reps out of like everyone. So that's also pretty impressive. So he definitely has a really good combination between speed and strength. And I think just the intangibles that he has and just the instincts are really good. He's a really good tackler. There are some questions about his pass rush skills. He doesn't necessarily have like any go-to pass rush moves. Kind of just uses his athleticism, which worked in college a lot, although the numbers don't pop off the charts. But in the NFL, it won't work as much because obviously there's going to be better offensive linemen that he's going up against. So I think that if he can really get some better technique and get some more pass rush moves, I think that Kwity Paye could quickly become one of the best edge rushers in the NFL.
Yeah, Kwity Paye, probably the number one edge rusher in this draft class. I definitely think that he's a candidate to go at 17 to the Raiders because they do basically just need all-around defense. Their defense is atrocious. But I definitely think he could potentially go higher too. But if he does drop here to the Dolphins, this is very, very good for them. I mean, if they can get another very explosive defensive talent to go along with a lot of other pieces that they put in place recently, Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, a bunch of other players, including other players too, like Xavier Howard. I'm blanking on their other really good corner.
Don't forget Byron Jones.
Most
underrated corner in the NFL.
So yeah, they have a lot of good defensive pieces there. So if they add another explosive piece to there with Kwity Paye, their defense might just get better. So adding on to Jamar Chase in this draft class, they add Kwity Paye. I feel like that is a very good first round for the Miami Dolphins in our mock draft.
All right, with the 19th overall pick going to the Washington football team, I'm going to have them drafting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker out of Notre Dame. And Jeremiah, just an extremely explosive and versatile defender, slightly smaller. I think that worries some scouts. Had an impressive pro day, though. His fundamentals occasionally break down, but I think you're just adding someone like this to an already good Washington football team defense would make them really, really, really scary going into this year. So, yeah, I think this would be a good fit for them, just making their defense even stronger.
He is a very, very fast linebacker, one that can play on the edge and potentially develop into one that can play in the middle. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he was a player that I would potentially want. Earlier when doing my own mock drafts, looking at the Chargers draft position, he was a player that I like to go there just because I think he would fit into their scheme too. But obviously a good pick for the Washington football team here. Obviously, it's the wrong name there, Washington Redskins. That's not their name anymore. It's the Washington football team. But, yeah, I feel like they potentially could move up for a quarterback. But if it's Mac Jones, I think it could be Trey Lance. I think they like Trey Lance if it's Justin Fields. But I don't know if they'll stay at – I think this is, pick 19. So, yeah. But if they do stay here, I feel like this is a good pick for them, just adding to their already great defense.
Yeah, I've been seeing this pick a lot in the mocks. But now we will move on to the Chicago Bears pick at pick 20, where they will be replacing Kyle Fuller, who they released in the offseason, with cornerback Greg Newsome out of Northwestern. Newsome, I mean, I think that Northwestern defense was pretty good, and Newsome was just a standout athlete in this defense. I mean, if you're getting him at this pick, this cornerback class is pretty good, as he's the fourth corner in this draft taken in these past 10 picks. And he's a freak athlete, and he's very lengthy, as you can see. This picture was just a coincidence that he's holding his arms up like that. But he's just an all-around playmaker. He can make huge plays at the right time. And since the Bears now have a hole at cornerback, I expect them to replace it with Greg Newsome, the next best corner on the board. Like Tyler mentioned, and a bunch of other of you guys mentioned, that they could be a potential trade up for a quarterback, but I don't see them doing that. I see them rolling out with Andy Dalton, who they promised would be their quarterback one. So I don't really see them trading up. So they're going to be replacing Kyle Fuller because now they have a hole. Now they're replacing it with Greg Newsome.
Not as much as about this pick. Obviously, it makes sense for the Bears. Greg Newsome, the second, going to the Chicago Bears after losing their number one corner. I just want to point out, I think it's funny that it says Chicago Bears and then right below it says the Bears. I feel like we realize that their name is the Bears by now, so I thought that was kind of funny. Okay, so with the 21st overall pick in the 2021 at the buzzer NFL draft, mock draft, I will have the Indianapolis Colts taking JAYLEN Phillips, edge rusher out of Miami. He has flown up the draft boards in the past couple of weeks. He's flown past his teammate Gregory Rousseau, and now people are looking at him as the same level as probably the best edge rusher in this draft in Kwity Paye. The Colts don't really have a great edge rusher right now. They don't have really one that stands out in their depth chart. They do have a great defensive tackle in DeForest Buckner, the biggest. He was robbed from being a Pro Bowler last year. So I feel like they add to their defensive line. They add to their good defense, get an explosive playmaker, a man that had a great pro day and that could potentially be he's one of the most talented defensive players in this draft. So they get a really good player here in our mock draft in JAYLEN Phillips. And yeah, the Colts are definitely going to be a dangerous team to watch this season.
All right. The next team up in the mock draft is the Tennessee Titans. They hold the 22nd overall pick in the NFL draft. And we have them selecting Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch much Oklahoma State football, but I did some research on Tevin Jenkins, and I do know that he's very solid against the run and against the pass in protection. So that's definitely good to be good at both when teams are looking at them. In terms of his fit with the Titans could definitely bolster their offensive linemen because obviously they have Derrick Henry and they play through him, but also they do like to throw the ball. And Ryan Tannehill was under a ton of pressure in the playoffs against the Ravens this past season. So that's definitely one of their biggest needs. So I think this pick makes a lot of sense for the Titans.
If they don't go with an offensive lineman, I definitely think this is kind of a sleeper spot for a wide receiver to go. They lost Corey Davis in free agency, don't really have a cemented wide receiver two in their offense behind A.J. Brown. So potentially going after Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, Rashad Bateman, Terrace Marshall, a lot of those players that are around here. Definitely think that this is a team that one of them could go to, but I don't know. Obviously, in our mock draft, we have Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle, going here, but I feel like the Titans could go with a bunch of different players in this scenario.
Okay, with the 23rd overall pick to the New York Jets, I'm going to have them selecting Azeez Ojulari, edge rusher from Georgia. And on the season with Georgia, he led the team in sacks. He was 8th in sacks in the FBS, second in forced fumbles. Honestly, just an explosive defender. He makes plays, and that's pretty much exactly what the Jets need. We all know the Jets are not going to be some incredible comeback story next year. They need someone that can make plays, and I think Ojulari can do that for them.
All right. And with the 24th overall pick, the first running back is off the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Najee Harris, running back out of Alabama. And personally, I'm not really a fan of taking running backs in the first round. I know most NFL people who follow the draft aren't really, but I think this is sort of a no-brainer after the Steelers decided to not re-sign James Conner, former Pro Bowl running back. But Najee Harris is right here. In my opinion, he is the number one running back in this draft class, and he is so versatile. I mean, he's just huge. He's absolutely huge. I mean, I think he has a little Derrick Henry in him. He's definitely not as obviously as bulky and big, but I definitely think he has some hints of Derrick Henry in them. And I think he's a clear-cut running back right here, and the Steelers really, really need one. It's a big hole in their offense. Big Ben can't really rely on his arm anymore as he wasn't very good last year. So, I mean, if you're getting a stud like Najee Harris in the backfield, I think that's pretty good at pick 24, even though I'm not really a fan of taking running backs in the first round.
I love this pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, Najee Harris is the number one running back in this draft class. He is a running back that could be a top 10 running back in my perspective from the second he gets into the league. He's that explosive. So Najee Harris, great fit for the Steelers here. After losing James Conner, they get their running back of the future. I don't think Anthony McFarland or Benny Snell is the solution to it. I think that Najee Harris is. And if they get him here at 24, this is a great pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, so with the 25th overall pick in our mock draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars, after taking Trevor Lawrence with the first overall pick, will take Trayvon Moehrig. Obviously, he's the number one safety in this draft class. I don't think there's a conversation about that. They signed former Charger Rashawn Slater in sorry, that's a draft prospect. They signed former Chargers safety Rashawn Jenkins in free agency this offseason. So they got a strong safety slash free safety. He can really play both. So I think that Trayvon Moehrig can just go to the other position. He's a free safety, obviously. So they might, if they do end up getting him, they could push Rashawn Jenkins to the strong safety position and have a new franchise free safety that they can rely on for the next couple of years. So I like this pick. He is a very good player, a very good prospect, speedy, long, can catch the ball in the air, can defend wide receivers. And yeah, he's a good pick.
The Jaguars building up their secondary, taking CJ Henderson early in the first round, now in our mock, Trayvon Moehrig. So I believe, Andrew, next pick.
All right, so the Cleveland Browns are up next with the 26th overall pick in the NFL draft, and we have them selecting Christian Barmore, who is a defensive tackle from Alabama. For those of you who didn't watch the national championship and the college football semifinal game, Christian Barmore was probably the best defensive player in both of those games. He was just absurd. He was in the run, he was stopping every run, filling all the gaps on defense, and then he was also getting to the passer. And yeah, he's just a really good all-around prospect. I know he had a really good pro day, and from the time of that national championship game where he played really well and up until his pro day, which is just recently, he's raised his stock a ton. And I think he's probably going to be the first defensive tackle off the board. I think that's what we have here in our mock draft, and I think that'll be true in the real NFL draft. And a team like the Browns, although they just signed Jadeveon Clowney, they could still use a guy to put in the center to stop and gobble up some of those runs. Because Jadeveon Clowney is mostly on the outside. Same thing with Myles Garrett. So I feel like if you add Christian Barmore to that, they could have one of the best really defensive lines in the NFL. So I think this pick makes sense. And I think he could even go earlier based on some of the other teams that could use a defensive tackle. I'm not sure how valuable the defensive tackle position is to some other teams, but I think if he's sitting here, the Browns will take him at 26.
I mean, if they get Christian Barmore, I'm not exactly for sure how to pronounce his last name completely correctly. But if they get him here, their defensive line just becomes more dangerous. And that's scary for any team they have to face, especially the teams in their division, because they have to face him twice a year. So, yeah, if the Browns can get him here, adding him to Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, great pick for the Browns.
All right, so now with the 27th overall pick, I'm going to have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Terrace Marshall Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. I'm not going to make this pick too complex. The Baltimore Ravens need more wide receiver targets and just receiving targets for Lamar Jackson Lamar Jackson to throw the ball. Wow. They need more targets for Lamar Jackson to throw the ball to. And I think Terrace Marshall can be that guy. They have the run game solidified. He just needs more options in like rolling out of the pocket, just making plays, and I think Terrace Marshall can do that.
I think Rashad Bateman would make sense at this pick too. They have their speedy wide receiver, Marquise Brown, so maybe getting a bigger one in Rashad Bateman could also work here, but Terrace Marshall is not a bad option too. A speedy wide receiver, explosive, but also very good with his hands. So very, very good player. Okay, so with the 28th overall pick in our mock draft, I have the New Orleans Saints picking Jamin Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky. Obviously, I feel like they could go with either Zaven Collins or Jamin Davis here. Both two very highly ranked linebackers in this draft class. Jamin Davis has also flew up the draft boards recently because of his pro day performance. So he's speedy, he's explosive, and I know Andrew has some stuff to say about this guy because he brought it up to us when we were officially first making this mock draft. So yeah.
Yeah, Jamin Davis. I actually watched a couple. I forget why, but I actually remember watching a Kentucky college football game against someone this past season, and I remember that he was just flying across the entire field, and he reminded me a little bit of a Cowboys player by the name of JAYLEN Smith, who they play the same position, they play the same
Always
way.
have to bring in a Cowboys player.
No, I'm being completely honest, and I'm not saying that Jamin Davis is like the next version of Jalen Smith or anything like that. I'm just saying that their play style is very similar because Jamin Davis, he covers the entire width of the field. He's an insanely good tackler, and he's really good at rushing the passer. He had an incredible 40 time, and he's also good in pass coverage. So he's really just a good overall linebacker, and I don't think he's as physically gifted, especially rushing the passer, as Micah Parsons. But in terms of linebacker rankings, I think he's number 2 right behind him.
And obviously the Saints defense is getting a little older year by year. Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis, and Malcolm Jenkins are all getting up in age. Sorry. So getting an explosive playmaker out there to maybe cut them some slack a little bit here and there. And Jamin Davis is going to be, if they get him here, will be a very important piece for the Saints to add to their team.
Yeah, like Andrew said, this dude, he's been going crazy on the going up the draft boards, and he had a crazy pro day. And I've heard some people say he's better than Micah Parsons, who we had going 8 to the Panthers. So if that's actually true, if he actually is better, ends up being better than Micah Parsons, this has got to be one of the biggest steals in our mock draft. But anywho, now we're going to moving on to the best team in the NFC, the Green Bay Packers at pick 29. And for the first time,
you can chill with that. You can chill with that.
For the first time, hopefully, I am praying that they select this player at pick 29 if he is available. Rashad Bateman, wide receiver out of Minnesota. I do expect the Green Bay Packers to trade up because ever since we've gotten our new GM in the past 4 drafts, he's traded up. So I do expect us to trade up again, maybe to select Rashad Bateman. But Rashad Bateman, mini Devonta Adams. When you have 2 Devonta Adams down the field, what are you going to do? He's the best wide receiver in the league. And if Rashad Bateman develops, and Aaron Rodgers, the reigning MVP, is throwing the ball. I think that Rashad Bateman, he's better than Terrace Marshall, who we went going before him. And I think he's very close. Not very close, but he's pretty. The drop-off's not huge between him and Devonta Smith, so to say, or Jalen Waddle. I think Jamar Chase is clear cut. But Rashad Bateman definitely up there with those guys. He's a great route runner, like I said. He's very athletic and very good at catching the ball in close coverage. So I've seen crazy highlights of him catching it when safeties and corners are moving up on him. It doesn't even phase him. He still catches the ball. So if he is available, I expect the Packers to take him at their pick. If he is not available, I'll be very sad. I can see the Packers taking offensive lineman, corner, and maybe a linebacker, but hopefully they take Rashad Bateman.
I have so many. I don't think that Rashad Bateman is going to step into the NFL and be the next Devontae Adams, but I think he has a ton of potential. Aaron Rodgers' future in the Green Bay Packers organization is it's not looking great. They didn't restructure his contract, as I've talked about with Dean before. So he calls it like a happy mystery or something like that, but it's definitely a mystery because after this season, it's going to be really weird, like cap wise, whether the Packers trade him or not, or whether he wants out if the Packers don't win a ring this year. But regardless of that, I think Rashad Bateman is the number 4 wide receiver behind the trio of Chase, Smith, and Waddle. Although we had Terrace Marshall a little bit higher on our draft list, from watching Rashad Bateman playing against Michigan in the Big Ten for 3 years, I can clearly say that he is really good. And he was just like, even when Michigan would double team him, he would still get open. He's really good in one-on-one scenarios. And as you said, Dean, he has a similar play style to Devontae Adams. I don't know if he'll ever hit that potential, but I think that he'll be no matter whether he's catching the majority of his footballs from Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers, I think that he'll be a really good player if the Packers take him.
I also want to note one more quick thing before we move on to the next pick. A few days ago, or maybe it'll be weeks when we release this podcast, Devontae Adams tweeted that him and Keenan Allen would each go for 300 yards together if they were both on the same team. Maybe that's hinting at them selecting a route runner. Rashad Bateman has been compared to Devontae Adams and Keenan Allen.
I don't think that's what he's suggesting. Devontae Adams is a free agent next year, and Keenan Allen is going to be on the Los Angeles Chargers for the next 3 years. So if that indicates anything, then it means Devontae Adams wants to come to the Los Angeles Chargers.
Talking about bringing things back to your own team.
Devontae Adams actually knows a guy who lives in New York. So I think he might go play for the Knicks next season, but I'm not 100% sure. Andrew, do you have anything to say about that?
I would just like to make an announcement. I've just heard that the Green Bay Packers are planning to trade up to the 3rd overall pick to select Kyle Trask. It doesn't really surprise me. They traded up to get Jordan Love last year, so why not just take a second quarterback to go behind Aaron Rodgers for no reason? So sounds good.
I mean, that was very comedic, Tyler. But what I was going to say was, it's kind of ironic. Tyler was like, Andrew, always got to make everything about the Cowboys. And then he just comes in about the Chargers.
Was it me or was it you that brought up Keenan Allen? I don't remember bringing up Keenan Allen.
No, I never asked anyone to barge in when I was talking about Rashad Bateman being compared to Keenan Allen. So maybe that's Devontae Adams' hint. And also the top comment on that post or on that tweet was maybe Devontae Adams hinting at Rashad Bateman to come to Green Bay. And Jordan Schultz, you know who that guy is at ESPN? He replied with the eyes emoji. So you never know. That's all I was saying. Now we're going to move on to the Bills pick at pick 30.
All right. So at pick 30, we have the Buffalo Bills taking JAYCEE Oweh. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce his name, but it doesn't really matter. He's a really good football player. And I'm sure all the broadcasters will pronounce it differently as they normally do. But another guy that was in the Big Ten conference, saw him playing against Michigan a ton of times, and he was wrecking havoc all over the field. I think he's a very underrated edge rusher. I'm not sure if this is his actual 40 time. I think it was his unofficial 40 time, but he did run a 4.36 in his pro day, which is like absolutely absurd. That's faster than guys like Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. So if that is really true about JAYCEE Oweh, then I think he is definitely a first round talent. And I think the Bills, who could use some boost on their defensive line, would be happy to take him.
Yeah, so with the 31st overall pick, I'm going to have the Baltimore Ravens taking Carlos Boschman, however you want to say it, Junior. As Drew would say, this guy's really good at football.
I think it's actually Basham. I'm pretty sure it's Carlos Basham, but
my reading isn't really too good, but this guy's good at football, so he's going to go 31st overall.
Before we go on, Carlos Basham has been ranked up there with a bunch of other edge rushers. Obviously, I'm hinting at another edge rusher going with the last pick in the first round here, but he's been up there with a couple other edge rushers like Jason Away and Jalen Phillips, even though Jalen Phillips has been a little bit above. And this next pass rusher that is on the same team as Jalen Phillips, I'm not going to say his name, but I just hinted a lot towards him.
Thanks for the hint, Tyler. Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Gregory Rousseau with the last pick in the first round of our mock draft. Gregory Rousseau, like Micah Parsons, who I also announced to the league, does have a few character issues that may or may not drop him into the second round potentially, but the Buccaneers are, let's be honest, they're stacked. So, I mean, since the Buccaneers are stacked, they can just take flyers on any player they want technically, and Gregory Rousseau definitely has some of the most potential as a defensive player in this draft. So I think this is a fair pick, so to say, for the Buccaneers, because like I just said, they're stacked. They can take anyone they want, basically. So they can take a running back and they can take a safety. You never know. So Gregory Rousseau, edge out of Miami, great talent, character issues and all, but if he pans out, he'll be a great player and just make the Buccaneers even better in the future.
Yeah, obviously, like the Saints, the Buccaneers are getting a little bit older on defense every year, and obviously they added a young player in Antoine Winfield, and they do have Shaquille Barrett on their defense and Devin White, but Levante David, Ndamukong Suh, a bunch of their other kind of premier kind of guys on their team overall, and on defense specifically, I'm talking about here, are getting older, and they need a player where he can potentially be a starting player for them in the next couple of years, and potentially a player that has a lot of talent and that can be a premier edge rusher in the future. And obviously, although he does have little character issues like you were talking about, if he can get that straight, then Gregory Rousseau will be a great NFL player. And he has, if not the most talent, then he's a top 3 talent as an edge rusher in this draft. And I think as a talent, maybe a top 5 talent as a defensive player in this draft. So obviously character issues and trouble off the field has brought his draft position down a little bit. But if a team like the Buccaneers do want to take a chance on him, I definitely think it could be worth it. So obviously that will do it for our full first round mock draft of the 2020 NFL draft. This draft happens next week, starting on April 29th, if I'm sure, going through May 1st. Be ready for that Machine Gun Kelly concert coming at the end. Should be very, very exciting. Yeah, that will do it all. I'm Tyler Fertel alongside Andrew Loveweiner, Cam McCline, and Dean McCullum. Thank you for watching. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at AT Buzzer Podcast, and we will see you next time.